G'day, welcome back to the channel and welcome to this edition of MGUY EV News for Thursday the 13th of June 2024. Please make sure you're subscribed and enable all notifications so you never miss another MGUY video. So the first article today, really interesting article in the Wall Street Journal. All of these articles are linked in the description. Go and check them out, go and read them for yourselves. Fascinating stuff. Wall Street Journal, written by a guy called Stephen Koonin. He wrote a book called Unsettled recently, challenging the mad climate hysteria that we're having to suffer at the moment. Obviously, he's probably been branded a far-right extremist now because he dares to raise some concerns about what's happening. Anyway, this is a really interesting article. The climate crisis fades out. As the energy transition inches through the issue attention cycle, a wiser approach should emerge. The 2015 Paris Agreement aspired to reduce the risks and impacts of climate change by eliminating greenhouse gas emissions in the latter half of this century. The centerpiece of this strategy was a global transition to low-emission energy systems. After nearly a decade, it's timely to ask how that energy transition is progressing and how it might fare in the future. A useful framework for that assessment is the issue attention cycle, described in 1972 by Brookings Institution economist Anthony Downs. The 5 phases of that cycle mark the rise, peak and decline in public salience of major environmental and other problems. It's spooky to see how closely the energy transition has so far followed Downs' description. During Phase 1, the issue of global warming bubbled among climate scientists through the 1980s with little public attention. Phase 2 began about 35 years ago when the issue, eventually rebranded climate change, burst into public consciousness, with global media coverage growing tenfold over the past 2 decades. Those years were marked by a fervour of doing something to solve the problem. But the significant global emissions reductions envisioned in Paris are now a fantasy. Emissions grew to an all-time high in 2023, with consumption of coal, oil and natural gas each near record levels, driven in large part by the energy needs of the developing world. Despite global renewable energy investment of almost $12 trillion in the 9 years ending in 2023, fossil fuels continue to provide about 80% of the world's energy. The latest United Nations emissions report projects that emissions in 2030 will be almost twice as high as a level compatible with the Paris aspiration. The challenges in reducing emissions have long been evident to the few who cared to understand demographics, economics and energy technologies. Who would bother with that stuff, eh? Losers. As more people have come to appreciate those factors, there are signs that the climate crisis has entered Downs Phase 3. When ambitious goals collide with techno-economic realities. Absolutely right. Go and read the whole thing, link in the description, but the conclusion is this. We should welcome, not bemoan, the energy transition's passage through the issue attention cycle. It means that today's ineffective, inefficient and ill-considered climate mitigation strategies will be abandoned, making room for a more thoughtful and informed approach to responsibly providing for the world's energy needs. Absolutely. Stop trying to control the climate. That would be a good start. Just think about this for a minute. Okay, so we've got a minor heating, we've got a bit of warming going on. We don't know really whether it's natural or man-made or what the proportion of those is. We still don't know the attribution really of the warming that we've seen in the last, 150 years. Could all be natural. It might not be, it might be partly human induced, but could pretty much all be natural. And here we are trying to control the climate of the planet. So what I say to you is just wait till the next ice age comes or starts, because it will at some point. There will be another ice age on this planet. What are we going to do then? Are we going to try and control the climate so that we don't have another ice age? Good luck with that, is all I can say. So any country where they have gone full crazy with energy transition is basically bankrupt or on the verge of bankruptcy. Germany is the same. There's an article in the Telegraph today about how Germany is just collapsing under the weight of mad energy policies. And our foolish neighbours across the ditch in New Zealand were in exactly the same position. Fortunately, they've voted out their far left government and have actually got some sensible people in charge now who are reversing all this madness, including allowing them to drill for oil again. Drill, baby, drill. How Jacinda Ardern left New Zealand on the brink of blackouts. Fallout from country's oil ban offers dire warning for a Labour-run Britain. So Keir Starmer is standing by a pledge to ban new drilling in the North Sea, despite New Zealand abandoning a similar policy amid blackout fears. Oh, give me strength. Labour's manifesto, due out on Thursday, will feature a pledge to block all new licensing for oil and gas as one of its key energy policies. The party will not be issuing licenses to explore new oil and gas fields as we accelerate to clean power. I mean, these people are morons. Literally morons. And yet people keep voting them in. People are stupid enough to keep voting these morons in. Well, as my dad used to say, you get the government you deserve. Ah, the Cybertruck. Today's Cybertruck hilarity. They're so popular that almost 5% of them are already for sale online. Roughly 5% of all Cybertrucks are for sale online right now. There are either a lot of Cybertruck flippers out there or people aren't happy with their electric pickup trucks. Wonder which that would be. They're a piece of shit. It sure looks like a lot of people are taking delivery of their brand new Tesla Cybertruck, realizing it is sort of ass and promptly listing it for sale. That or they're losers who bought them just to flip. Regardless of the reason, there are currently 232 nearly new Cybertrucks listed for sale. Doing some rough math, adding together a new electric report that Tesla delivered about 3,000 Cybertrucks in May, and an April report that Tesla had sold 3,878 of the trucks up until that point, we can reasonably assume Tesla has sold somewhere in the neighbourhood of 6,500 trucks so far since its launch back in November of 2023, meaning just about 4% of all Cybertrucks ever built are on Auto Trader alone right now. Matters get even worse when you look at other sites like Auto Tempest, Cars.com, Facebook Marketplace and various online auction houses. It seems that there are probably close to 300 Cybertrucks for sale online at this moment, which, in my opinion, is far too many. That comes out to 5% of all Cybertrucks being for sale online. Anybody who buys a Cybertruck to actually use it as a truck is an idiot. And anybody who buys it as a vanity purchase is an idiot as well. So there you go. So this is something that I've mentioned in my videos before, and that is that EV charging stations are actually incredibly uneconomical to run. You need massive infrastructure capital costs to get the things set up. And then you need a connection to the grid. And then the cost of electricity is astronomical because you get these things called demand charges, as we shall see. High energy costs can hinder EV charging infrastructure. Hefty, hard-to-predict fees called demand charges could stop businesses from opening charging stations in certain locations. Exorbitant and inconsistent electricity costs are among the biggest challenges operators of electric vehicle chargers face when building a station. Hefty, hard-to-predict fees called demand charges could stop businesses from opening charging stations in certain locations, or push them toward alternatives such as battery storage, charging companies and other stakeholders told Automotive News. Annual demand charges could cost as much as $100,000 per location in Maine for companies applying for charging incentives through the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, according to an analysis by EV Adoption. The federal government has dedicated $5 billion to the program to help states create a network of charging stations at 50-mile intervals along interstate highways. If there is no path to profitability, folks are not going to get into the business, said Ryan McKinnon, Public Affairs Manager for Charge Ahead Partnership, a coalition of EV charging stakeholders. While large corporations that own gas stations and travel centres can choose to add chargers in one state over another to avoid high demand charges, small businesses don't have as many options, he said. They either install chargers at their current locations and pay the price, or they don't. Very interesting article. Link in the description. Go and read it at your convenience. Here is just a perfect example of what an absolute disaster the renewable grid is. Because unlike gas or nuclear or any of these regular generating technologies, you can't determine when the sun shines or when the wind blows. So it's all dependent on the weather. But the demand on the grid is not dependent on the weather. Actually, let's have a look at that. While I'm talking about this, let's have a look at this. So this is live supply and demand of electricity in Australia right now. As you can see, it says Thursday the 13th of June 14:05, which is exactly when I'm recording this video. And you can see this is the different split of generation and demand. And wind in South Australia, most of it is gas. Tiny little bit of wind, liquid fuel, don't know what that is. Wind, bit of solar, 161 megawatts of wind, but nearly 1.2 gigawatts of gas. Victoria, I can't even see the wind bar there. Is it even there? I don't know. No wind at all in Victoria. Nothing. New South Wales, I think there might be just a tiny little sliver of green somewhere. Again, nothing. Nothing. And here we've got, what have we got? In Queensland, we've got 9 gigawatts of generating capacity. And of that, wind is 30 megawatts. 0.3% of Queensland's energy demand is being met by wind right now. Nearly over a third of it is black coal. There's quite a little bit of solar. That's good. But that's because it's a sunny day today. You know, if it's not sunny, like it isn't so sunny here in New South Wales, we've got 6.3 gigawatts of black coal, some solar, hydro, other, and literally I cannot see any wind at all. All those wind turbines that cost billions of dollars just sitting there doing bugger all. So sorry, I was just explaining that this is why the renewable grid is such a complete disaster, because you can't balance generation with demand. You can't just simply spin up a gas turbine to meet demand or switch one off. It's insane. And this is the kind of result you get. Germans pay to have Danish wind turbines turned off when it's windy. It was an inquiry from 2 citizens that got us on the trail of a story about an energy market where wind turbine owners are paid to turn off wind turbines. And yet this is progress, apparently. There are many wind turbines in central and west Jutland. In fact, we are the part of the country with the most wind turbines. They shoot up in the landscape and on the water, and that's ugly as hell, because they have to take advantage of all the wind that rushes over central and western Jutland, so that we can all get green-produced electricity. Therefore, the citizens Jens Bollerup and Dan Brush Jensen were surprised that they could drive past wind farms that stood still in windy weather several times. One day when I was out sailing, I wondered why these turbines were standing still. It was a day when there were 12 metres of wind per second, said Jens Bollerup, who is a business broker in Videsander, whatever that is. Dan Brush Jensen, who is a holiday home owner in Zondervig, has had similar experiences at Norhede Hjortmoser. This is really challenging my Danish pronunciation here, which is Denmark's largest onshore wind farm. It has 22 turbines and can produce electricity for 57,000 households. That's bugger all, by the way. When we drive back and forth to the cottage, we are surprised that there are 22 fine turbines that are standing completely still, even though it is blowing from the west, he says. TV Midfest went into the case, and it turns out that the stationary wind turbines are not a fault. Energinet, which is responsible for the infrastructure of electricity in Denmark, states that they are the ones who turn off the turbines in windy weather. Energinet explains, when it is very windy in West Jutland, it is also very windy in northern Germany. This means that the wind turbines together sometimes produce much more power than we need. If the superfluous power is not moved elsewhere, for example to large industrial areas in southern Germany, there will be an overheating in the cables in Denmark. This is the mess we have constructed for ourselves with this renewable energy madness. We are reaping what we have sown. And just like the energy grid is a complete disaster, now we're pumping it full of unpredictable renewables, so is the global car market, with bans and tariffs and God knows what else just piling up on top of each other and making it a complete schmozzle. British car brands caught up in EU crackdown on electric vehicles, MG and Lotus among those to be affected by 48% tariff on EVs made in China. Yeah, because a lot of people outsource the manufacture of their vehicles to China because it's cheaper. And now they're going to be hit with a tariff for bringing them back into Europe. Oh, God, what a mess. British car brands, including MG and Lotus, have been caught up in a European Union crackdown on Chinese electric vehicles. Brussels has announced tariffs of up to 48% on EVs made in China, included those manufactured by MG, Volvo and BYD, in a row over what the EU claims are unfair subsidies from Beijing. The measures offer protection for European car makers who have complained that they are being undercut unfairly. However, the tariffs threaten to push up the price of EVs for drivers in the bloc. It also risks a diplomatic spat with China. Beijing has reacted angrily to the threat of a proposed European crackdown and warned it will impose its own tariffs on European goods in retaliation. Imported EVs already face tariffs of 10% in the EU, but the European Commission said on Wednesday it was prepared to impose extra duties on the biggest Chinese manufacturers of between 17% and 38%. So what we're doing is we are forcing a particular product on the market, and then when manufacturers find ways to get around that and to benefit from that, we then have to slap tariffs on top of it to stop it. It's bad regulation on top of bad regulation. It's multi-layered incompetence. And the only people that suffer are us poor buggers. All right, that's it for this one. Thanks very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next one. Bye for now.